Welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root with Megan and Shannon, the podcast, where we dive deep into all things health and wellness to help you find health and healing inside and out for now and forever.
Hello, and welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root with Megan and Shannon. I am Megan Abbott, owner and founder of the holistic health practice Trifecta Collective. And this is my co-host and head practitioner, Shannon Callery. Welcome to the...
Hello. Can't wait for today's topic. We're talking all about holiday stuff today and like how to keep your body in check, keep your mind in check, since we know the holidays can be a chaotic time for most people.
Yes, and certainly we have plenty of personal experience in this world, and we've already started talking to clients about this, and even, people on consults, this is already coming up. So yeah, we wanted to do a dedicated episode to really dive deep into this. And we know that holidays can be challenging for a wide variety of reasons, including, just your overall health goals, whatever those may be. And then also, just keeping your sanity as best you can around this time of year. Which, yeah, I mean, it can be a very stressful time of year. And I think a lot of times we can exacerbate that ourselves by not doing some of the things that we're going to touch on today.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like a big part of this too is like around the holiday season, we're seeing a lot of people that maybe we don't normally see on a regular basis, certain family member, friends, maybe people who have a tendency to trigger us a little bit for certain topics. There's people who can trigger us, and then there's also topics that can trigger us as well. I feel like one of those really big things when it comes to if you're someone who's like in the health space, or maybe just trying to make adjustments in your life and look at things a little more seriously, like when it comes to food or just taking care of your body, not everyone is on the same page as that. And I know that that's a big thing around the holidays that can be really difficult. Like if you're choosing to make specific food choices for yourself, or, maybe you're someone who's overcoming some disordered eating patterns and whatnot, it can be really hard just to hear people's comments, because people tend to comment on things that we're doing, especially when it comes to food and whatnot. So yeah, I feel like that's a huge topic around the holidays, and just being able to, even though it's tough, set some sort of boundaries for yourself. And that can even look like, when things are getting heated, when you notice yourself starting to get a little bit frustrated with whatever topic that it may be, taking a step outside, I feel like is always a really good option, like getting some fresh air, just taking a minute, taking a couple deep breaths to clear your mind. That is one thing that I utilize during the holidays a lot, is just like, if I need a second, making sure I can give myself that space so things don't start to build up.
Yeah. And for me, especially throughout my healing journey, I've become much more sensitive to being around large groups of people. And it's just, like, and the loudness that can happen around, just sometimes family members or friends, and just like the overstimulation that can happen. For me, one of the things that, and I'm just coming back into quote unquote real life from journey space and being off for a week, and so this is like pretty near and dear to my heart after being in a space with a bunch of other people for many days at this point, and that is making sure, specifically in the morning and in the evening, I have a few minutes to reset and connect with my own energy, with my own body, to just like be with myself, because I can get so drained and overwhelmed that having these little times to check in with myself and reconnect with myself is so important and so valuable. And so like for me, a morning routine, I cannot stress this enough. Just having some sort of morning practice, and this goes for all the time, let alone when you're definitely traveling and being around lots of people, staying in other people's homes or in like places that aren't your spaces, like taking 5 minutes to do a meditation, to do some breath work, to, for me, sometimes it's just like sitting in silence, especially if I'm around a lot of other people, putting in some binaural beats, doing some breath work, whatever it may be. But like that is fundamental and non-negotiable. Anytime I'm traveling, like that is one of the things that helps me so much, especially in the morning, having those couple minutes before I talk to anyone, just to have that reconnection with myself and regulation of the nervous system and really getting in touch with my own body, my own energy before anyone has the chance to kind of interfere with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think just making that time, that extra time for yourself. And it's not like, I have a very big family and I love being around them, but it's the same thing. Like, especially when you get into this work and you become maybe a little bit more sensitive to other people's energies, it's not like I don't enjoy being around them. And I'm sure many people feel this way. It's just, it can feel so overstimulated. So making sure that you set that extra time aside, for me, it's got to be like a morning and at night thing, or else it will 100% affect my sleep if I don't take like at least a couple minutes to just try and like regain, get my thoughts together, pull everything in before I go to bed at night. So that's a super important piece. And even doing something along the lines of, I'm going to say liver support, but it also kind of goes into like a mindfulness thing and just like taking time for yourself, essentially. Like, if I'm staying somewhere that has access to like a bathtub, I would try and do an Epsom salt bath, just something that's like soothing and relaxing my body. Surely I typically bring like my castor oil pack with me because I know that it's a 2-for-1 thing. It's going to help me support my liver, and we're eating extra stuff around the holidays. Like we don't have maybe as much control over the food. We're not cooking everything at home. So in that aspect, it can help support your liver. It's also going to help with stress management and your stress response. So putting some additional things in there like that, just adding them into your daily routine, are things that are going to help your body as a whole stay in a more balanced place.
Yeah, and take breaks. If you've got a busy day and you're seeing, I was talking to someone this morning, she's like, yeah, I have 3 Thanksgivings in 48 hours. And I'm cool. That's a lot, and for me, this often looks like I'm going to the restroom and I'll have to pee, just because I'm drinking so much water. But, then just like taking an extra couple minutes in there just to like wash my hands and like, thinking about doing some clearing work, like taking a few big deep breaths while I'm doing that, take your phone into the bathroom, bring some headphones, listen to some binaural beats or, a 1 to 2 minute meditation or breath work or, whatever it is. And not look like no one's going to say anything. If you take like 2 5-minute breaks throughout the day, I don't know any family that would be like, what were you doing? What were you doing? What was taking you so long? Like, why did you step away? Anything like that. And, be like, I needed a minute to myself to recuperate, just to like relax for a minute, to take that time. And it's so small, 1 to 2 minutes. Take it, do it, and you will be so much better off as a result. And it really does make a world of difference.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up too, about we tend to pack our schedules around the holidays, and it's tough for people who live out of town like myself. When we go home, we're trying to fit so much in one time because these are people that we don't get to see very often. However, I have done that for a couple of years now, and every year by the time that I get back home, it's almost to the point where like I'm on the verge of getting sick because I wasn't taking enough time to slow down. And this is where the boundary setting comes in. It can be really tough because we feel like maybe we're letting people down or we're being mean, whatever the case may be, maybe feeling a little bit of guilt and shame from it too. But I had to take a step back in last year is when we started doing this and actually start to tell people that I couldn't come to things. You know, it's not worth it if it's to the point where you're getting so stressed out that you're having a flare up or you feel like you're getting sick just from the amount of events that are happening and whatnot. So, and this can be really hard to set some boundaries like that, but ultimately, I think it's worth it if you sit down and ask yourself, like, you know, did I have fun? Did I enjoy it? Did I feel good at like the end of the holiday season? And if your answer is consistently no, then I think it's time to think about making changes and then put some of those boundaries into place. Maybe, and sometimes that looks like cutting out certain events.
Yeah. And I was just in Richmond for a week, and, I don't necessarily expect to be back there until this time next year, in which case, there was limited things. I had limited time, and I did take a few extra days to be there, before and after my retreat. And I did not get to see everyone I would have liked to see. And I also knew that I couldn't. I knew it was just going to be too much, even coming back. I'm tired. I had a time change. We had a time change the weekend before I left, and then, going back to the East Coast and then coming back to the Midwest. It's a lot. And being able to have a little bit of time and flexibility, man, does that go such a long way. And it really isn't. It just isn't worth putting yourself back so much and then feeling miserable for the following, 1 week, 2 weeks, however long it takes you to recover, especially if you have a lot of chronic issues. Like, I've been there. I've put myself in a flare too many times than I would like to count, just because of stress and trying to overdo it and too much. And then you're going to pay for it at some point. And it's just a matter of, okay, well, what costs are you willing to pay? Are you willing to say no to a couple of things so you have a little bit of extra time and space so that you're not going into a full flare, into full burnout mode, kind of coming out of this? And then it's taking you days, weeks, months in some cases to recover from, this time of year should be, we think about Thanksgiving, gratitude, whatever holiday, if you celebrate a holiday in December, it should be about family and connection. And that's really, I would also encourage you to think, what are you trying to get out of this? And what is this time of year? What does this really mean to you? And how would you like to go into it and approach it? And what would you like to get out of it? And I can almost guarantee burnout is not going to be on your list here.
Yeah.
And so, just being mindful of your energy, of your time, of how much you're giving away versus how much you're getting input wise and everything. That really, just think about that and just take some time to really evaluate what does that look like for you, and what is most important to you kind of going into the rest of the year here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. And that's like, essentially we're talking about making sure you're filling your own cup when we're recommending like taking time to step away. That's giving yourself that time is refilling your own cup. And I like that idea too of, I go through this every year and I say it to myself, but this is one thing that I don't often like write down in my journal. I'm very big into journaling, but actually I set tensions for everything, but not once have I done it for like the holiday season. And I think that's a really great idea. So, I mean, for anyone who's listening too, I say, why not? That's a challenge for this holiday season. Like, go ahead, grab a journal, write down your intentions. Like, how do you want your holidays to go? How do you want them to feel? And I think that's a really great thing that we could all try.
Yeah. And I just, I feel like starting mid-November through the end of December, beginning of January, it's like, rushing around, doing a million things. And then we're like, we're just going to put everything off until, January 1st and feeding our own health and well-being. And, having worked in the fitness industry for many, many years, and, there's so much preparation that goes into this, quarter one, in the fitness industry. And, I just, is it worth it? Is it worth it to really just burn yourself out and go for like 6 weeks straight of just like go, nonstop, eating, drinking, all of these things, not taking time for yourself, like pushing for work stuff, like travel. It's a lot. And if that's what you want, that is okay. And just really, I would encourage you to take some time and not make too many personal sacrifices and then be like, I'll focus on myself come January 1, because, and this is a big thing for our practice. We've talked so much about, we don't like elimination diets. We don't like, we're not big on restriction because it's not feasible long term. And I think if we really do take time to evaluate different seasons, different seasons of our lives, different seasons of the year, what do we want out of these seasons? And there's less pressure, even just like that we put on our own, ourselves kind of going into these spaces. And then we can also evaluate, when we talk about boundaries, what do our boundaries want to look like? What are topics we do not wish to engage in? And for me, like, I do not engage in any sort of weight loss conversations. I have no interest anymore. I don't care. I'm not upset by it. I just have no interest in dealing with that. I'll also say the same goes with politics. I have no interest in engaging really at all. And I know this is going to be a big topic going into this year after the election. Whatever way that you feel, it doesn't really matter. But politics can be very stimulating, can be very overwhelming, and can really drain you, especially if you have different views in your family. And here's the thing. All you have to do is say, hey, I'm not engaging in this conversation. If you guys would like to talk about it, obviously you are more than welcome. And I'm going to leave. I'm going to just step away, go to another room, because I don't wish to engage in this conversation. And that's it. And, if people give you crap for it, that's on them. That's not a you thing. How someone responds to a boundary of yours, as long as you are setting it clearly and, I'd say, not aggressively, don't be mean about it, but just a very matter of the fact, like, hey, I am choosing not to engage in political conversations this time of year, right now. And just, I want to give you a heads up that if you guys choose to engage in that, that is totally fine, totally your call. And I will leave. I'm going to remove myself from the conversation.
Yeah. And that's setting a strong boundary. And I would highly recommend practicing it before you go to any events, because given, it's bound to come up. I feel like it's like that every year. Politics is always the number one thing that is causing fights at family functions. And I would be willing to say the nutrition stuff as well, maybe not causing fights, but is definitely a triggering piece to a lot of people. I mean, maybe it's just because this is the world that we're in and we hear about it a lot. And, we've also both experienced that, but having that conversation around food as well, and just like having people make comments about weight or wanting to talk about weight, or, again, if you have a sensitivity to something like gluten and dairy, which Megan and I have both experienced this, just like when people, maybe they don't understand it and they can ask questions that come off potentially a little bit harsh, it's okay to just say, hey, I don't really feel like talking about this right now or tomorrow or, whatever it is. Let's talk about something else. Just a way to redirect the conversation and make it clear that that's not what you desire to talk about.
Exactly. And I think a really important thing with boundaries too that we need to understand is boundaries are yours. They're also yours to uphold. So especially if you are setting some new boundaries, and once again, like I know Shannon and I have both largely experienced this around food and like, hey, I'm not eating gluten, hey, I'm not eating dairy, and things like that in particular. That is your boundary to uphold. It's not someone else's. And just because someone may not remember or they may try and cross your boundary, it is yours to uphold. And it is not other people's responsibility. Now, we hope that they care enough that over time that they will learn and they will not bring up certain things or talk about certain things, all of these things. But in the beginning, remember it's new for them too. It's a new boundary for them. And they may not be used to this. They may not remember. We're all very consumed with our own lives. And, it's impossible to remember everything. And so it's just important to remember that, when you set a new boundary, I really appreciate to give other people some grace in doing that. And that, absolutely remind them, like, if you set that boundary around like, hey, I'm choosing not to, I would really prefer not to talk about, my gluten sensitivity, what this means, what this looks like, why, da, 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 da. And if someone says, hey, what's this gluten thing again? You're like, hey, I really would prefer not to talk about it, and leave it at that. And it's not, you're not being mean. It's just, hey, just as a reminder kind of thing. This is my boundary. I'm upholding that, and I'm not going to let you pass that. I'd also say that if you set these boundaries clearly, and if someone has a reaction that you don't like, remember that's on them. That is not a you thing. It is a them thing. It is their own trauma, their own insecurities. It's their stuff coming up. It is not your stuff. And I would highly encourage you not to internalize that as best you can, not to hold on to that because it's not yours. It's how someone else responds. Once again, as long as we're coming at these things respectful with love and grace and all of these kinds of things, if someone has a poor reaction, that's on them. And, for me, this has been really big, especially, putting stuff out on social media and all that kind of stuff. We absolutely get negative comments. And not to say that sometimes they don't get to me still, because, yeah, here and there, it's not very common, but it used to really bother me. And one of the things, the way that I like to reframe these things, whether it's in person or online, is, man, how terrible must they feel? What must they be going through to respond and react like this? And it almost turns it around instead of being, really hurt, angry, whatever it is. And those are all 100% okay feelings to feel, but also understanding that people are responding to their own trauma. And, especially for women, this is a really common one of like, hey, I don't want to talk about my weight. I don't want to talk about body image, looks, anything like that. If people keep talking about it, it's because of their own insecurities. And they're looking for something. They're looking for fulfillment, for grace, for reassurance, something. That's what they are fishing for. And it's because of their own trauma. And so I think if we sometimes reframe and kind of look at it like that, it shifts things a little bit different. And there's a little bit more empathy and maybe sometimes not taking things so personally.
Yeah, that's a very big part of this too, just because it can feel really uncomfortable when we set those boundaries, especially if we're not used to it. Like we can start to feel some of that guilt and shame on our own, when in reality, it could be just a reflection of like what the other person was feeling or the way that they responded to the boundary that you set. So I think that's a really important piece to it as well. And if there is a reaction that happens that maybe is a little bit upsetting to you, again, that's a really great time to just like take a step away, gather your thoughts, take a couple deep breaths, get regulated, and then go back in, maybe set a new intention to try and enjoy, the rest of your event or whatever it may be. And I also think and I understand that this may not apply for every situation or event that you're in, but having like a safe space or a safe person or just like someone that you can relate to and talk to that can kind of help with these things if you are feeling a little bit triggered about something, because it's easier said than done it takes a long time to learn how to do that on your own. So sometimes it can be helpful to have an additional person to just talk to, someone that you can go to get out of that funk that you're in.
Yeah, I like to call them accountability buddies. And just have someone that, you can call, you can text, whether, if they're there, obviously that makes it easier. But if they're not there, that's okay too. And just, sending a quick text of, several of my friends and I are doing different accountability things right now with each other. And just, it's just a quick text of, hey, this is what I'm going through right now. And setting the intention of, hey, if you're not in a place to respond, you don't have to respond. But this is for me actually just getting it out. And, one of the things we always do is if we need to like vent, be like, hey, you have 5 or 10 minutes to just hold space for me. And I just need to vent. I don't need advice. I don't need feedback. I literally just need to verbalize this and get it. And if they say no, that's okay. And if they say yes, then you're free to, just word vomit, all the things that you're feeling, just get it out. And that's really, really helpful to.
Yeah. So one of the things that I actually do that with a couple of my friends too. And there was a group that I used to be a part of when I first really got into the like the energetic space, I guess you could say. And we would have accountability buddies. And one of the things that we would do is instead of calling someone, we set the tone beforehand, like take as long as you need to reply to this or don't reply at all. But we would send voice memos just so like when we needed to get something out, like, again, no expectations on the other end, just like simply letting it out to let it out of your brain. You can also do this with journaling too. We call it brain dumping, just like getting all your thoughts out, writing it down on paper. Sometimes that's helpful if you haven't found like your safe person yet, or you don't feel like you have anyone you can vent to. You can also do this via journaling.
Yeah, all of these things are really, really helpful. And the more regulated you can be and taking that time to regulate yourself, taking the breaks, setting these intentions, doing all of these things, the happier you're gonna just be able to show up to any and all of the events and all of these things. And that makes a big difference, especially if you're not seeing, certain people very often. We want to show up as the best versions that are available to us at the time. And just the more regulated you can be and stay during this period of time, the better. Just the better you're going to feel, the better you're going to feel coming out of this. And then also the better you're going to be able to show up to all of these things as, the best versions of yourself or the way that you would like to be able to show up. It just makes it so much easier.
Yeah. And also another benefit too, if you're someone who struggles with like anxiety and depression, I had a therapist tell me like years ago, probably when I was in high school and my depression was really, really bad. She said, you're always going to be a person who, or not always, but during that time, after like the holidays, all these events are happening back to back. It's kind of like such an overstimulating high that, you essentially need to be careful of like an emotional drop off after that, because it's like everything is jam packed together within the holidays. And then all of a sudden you don't have any events after that. And it's just that space where you have your own thoughts and lots of things can creep up during that time. So this is where like that nervous system regulation piece, if we can get ahead of that before all of this stuff happens, it can potentially make it easier after all of these events happen to stay in that regulated space.
100%. And, we also see, we've had the time changes and it's getting darker sooner and there's less daylight out right now. And, even, we get into like for, most of us, like Northern Hemisphere, really cold months come January, February. Some people, it's very hard to go outside. It's very hard to get any natural light in your eyes. And
Yeah.
the care that you can give yourself now really can set you up come January, February. And there's lots of things we can do to, I used to get the seasonal affectiveness disorder, growing up in Pittsburgh. It's never sunny and just cold and dreary and wet all of the time, let alone all the other things that were going on in my life. And, I don't really have that now, and I haven't had that for many years. And, even back in Virginia, it was a lot sunnier, which was super helpful. But really, this care, compassion that you are giving yourself now goes such a long way. And it really is, it's really like our cortisol can really spike during this time, and we can become basically a cortisol junkie, adrenaline junkie during this time because we have all of these things that we're trying to pack in, and then you do get a huge crash come January, and it's very challenging. And so the more we can slow down, the more we can do these things these little things to take care of ourselves during this time, man, do they go a really long way to combat, I know just a lot of the anxiety, the depression that comes along with a lot of times the beginning of the year, kind of post-holiday season.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be really intense. I've experienced that myself. That's something that took me quite a long time to come out of, especially when, we moved to a different state, and then it was like, it's just my fiance and I, we don't really have a lot going on besides like work and our lives. So then you're in it all of a sudden with all these events, and then you go back home for us and it's like dead silent essentially for a while. So that was something that took a really long time to acclimate to, essentially, and like learn what I need to do for my body. And all of these things that we're talking about are really big things that help me. Another thing, anything else you want to say on that topic?
I don't think so. I really just think the more you can take care of yourself in the small ways, and we'll talk about several other small ways here that we can continue to take care of ourselves, just the better off you're going to feel going into the beginning of the year, and not feel, and then I feel like people go into like hardcore restriction from January, like I'm going to go to the gym and do all these things and New Year's resolutions and all that kind of stuff, which then we've got a lot of pressure on ourselves. And then if we don't do all the things, and there's a lot of guilt and shame, and then we go back into this cycle, which obviously we don't want to. So yeah, I think just the more small things, and it's not about being perfect. We are absolutely going to talk about like nutrition and movement and hydration and all that kind of stuff, and small things that you can do just to keep caring for yourself during this time. But really, this is about how do we keep doing little things to care for yourself? Because I'll also say you deserve it and you matter. And if you are pouring from an empty cup, which so many people do just on a day-to-day basis, the more you can slowly keep filling up your cup and making sure that your cup is filled, just the happier, the more enjoyment, the better. It's just the better you're going to feel overall. And that goes such a long way.
Yes. Yeah. Well said. Very well said. The other thing that I just wanted to touch on is alcohol, because I know that can be a really tough thing for some people, especially if you're maybe in the point of your journey where alcohol is no longer very appealing to you, because it can feel very, very isolating when, you're the person out of 20, 25 people at a party who's choosing not to drink. And I'm not shaming alcohol by any means. I still drink on occasion. I just don't have a desire to drink, as much as a lot of people do, especially around the holiday season. I understand that for some people, that's a way of trying to, it's fun, a way to relax their bodies. that's just no longer my version of fun or relaxing my body. It actually makes me feel more dysregulated. And it can be really hard to be the person in a room full of people who's, not participating in drinking alcohol. So one of the things that I really like to do is have something else that I enjoy drinking. Megan, I know you drink this too, but oftentimes I'll bring a kombucha with me and I'll put it in like a fancy wine glass to make me feel like I'm part of the party. And also from doing this, no one asks me questions because no one has any idea what I'm drinking. So that's like an added bonus to it. So just like grabbing your favorite drink, if you're choosing not to drink alcohol, and putting it in like a nicer glass just to make you feel like you're part of the party can help from people pinpointing you, asking you questions. And it's also just a way to make you feel like you're a part of the event, still having fun, and also respecting the boundaries that you set for yourself at the same time.
Yeah, great. All great stuff. And yeah, I'm actually coming up on almost a year of having no alcohol. And it's not that I don't drink. It's just, it is not appealing. And if the situation arose where I did want to have a drink, I would be totally okay with that. And yeah, it hasn't come up in the last year. And I'm okay with that too. And yeah, definitely having some sort of alternative. If you're out like at a bar or something, seltzer with lime is a great option. Lots of places have like different mocktails and stuff too, which can be a really good option. I'll also say, while alcohol isn't great, generally speaking, for our bodies, there is emotional value for many people in that. And I just want to acknowledge and recognize that and say that is okay. And I also want to just be clear, just because I fell into this category quite a bit of, when you have all of these events, especially around this time of year, drinking can add up. And also recognize that if you're someone who has anxiety, who has depression, who, the seasonal affectiveness disorder, all of that stuff impacts you, understand that the day after you drink, things in your brain shift. Alcohol does impact your brain chemistry, and it really down-regulates temporarily neurotransmitters, especially a lot of the ones that make you happy. So if you feel low mood, extra anxiety, a little extra depressed the day after you drink, that's a big part of it. It also impacts your sleep negatively, whether you openly recognize that or acknowledge that. It does. There's plenty of science that proves this. So just understand that, just once again, as someone who I self-medicated with alcohol for many years, and then that relationship started to shift. But then I really started to notice, even when I had a better relationship with alcohol, I don't sleep well. I notice my mood, like even just appetite, like all of that stuff shifts when you have alcohol. And once again, this is not to shame alcohol. There is emotional value in drinking, especially in like social situations. And it's important to also understand how your body's being impacted and just to make the right decision for you, whatever that may be, but just acknowledge making those decisions and making a very conscious decision as to whether you are choosing to drink or not, whether you are choosing, how much are you drinking or not. Just all really good things to just think about. And once again, if you're looking at intentions and setting intentions, maybe make some intentions around alcohol. And if you notice you're having a hard time saying no or feeling guilty about not drinking, that's a time for self-reflection. Okay, why? Why are you feeling that way? Is it social pressure? Are you, friends with a lot of people who are very heavy drinkers? Well, why are they really heavy drinkers? Where is that stemming from? How does that reflect back to you? How would you like that to reflect back on you? Just all things to just really, really think about. And I'll also say the same thing goes to food. if you love pie, and I'm saying this just because this is me, I love pie. I love pie more than cake. My birthday is right around Thanksgiving. I'm not a cake person. I love a good apple pie, a good pumpkin pie. I mean, most pies, you just give me I'm all for the pie. And I will eat the pie, and I will eat probably more than my body would prefer to have. And there's a lot of emotional value that goes into that. I also make my own pies now, so they are gluten-free, they are dairy-free, so my body, I'm not getting those things in there. But I also recognize that, and I think it once again goes to like, well, what's the intention? I have pie once a year. I'm going to really enjoy it when I have it, and and that's okay.
Yeah. I think that's the dessert aspect in general can be a really big thing around the holidays too. Like, and it gets tricky when we try to eliminate those things around the holidays, or we try and become very restrictive around them. You've been there, done that. It's not a good ending to it. If you want to eat it, I highly suggest just eating what you want to eat and what you desire to eat around that time. Again, there's a big energy piece to this when you're, for me, like, I really love going home and baking desserts with my mom. I used to bake with my grandma all the time, and I like to eat those desserts, and I'm not going to tell myself that I can't eat them. And that's where, like, we get into some of the disordered eating stuff. Like, in my past, binge eating was a thing. And whenever I told myself that I couldn't have it, of course, I'm going to eat as much of it as I can whenever I can at that point, because you're restricting yourself from it. So it's almost like we have to get to know our limits too. Like, by no means, I do not restrict myself at all from desserts around the holiday anymore, but I also know my limit. If I have maybe a couple cookies, I don't typically eat a lot of sugar in the first place, and I know the way that my body's going to feel after. So again, just like getting to know yourself, getting to know what you feel comfortable with and what's going to make you uncomfortable is a really big part of this. Just highly recommend avoiding the restriction piece, because that's when we start to see issues happen after that.
Yeah, and this is a question that's already come up quite a bit for us with clients, even just talking to people on our free consults of, should I start now? Should I wait? What kind of restriction am I going to have to do? And, once again, this is a big reason why we don't do restrictive diets, is because we just see them go really, really wrong. And, same thing, if someone wants to start with us now, great, amazing. There are so many things that we can do to help and support you physically, mentally, emotionally through this time of year. That's not going to involve restriction. Now, we're going to give you some pointers, and we're going to go over those today here too. But a big piece of this is, if you are working with someone, a practitioner, a naturopath, whoever it may be, and they're like, you've got to stay on your low FODMAP diet during the holiday season. You've got to stay on the X, Y, and Z diet. It's going to put stress and pressure on you. And this is a time of the year to enjoy. There's so many cool things, for me, I celebrate Christmas, and Christmas was I only started enjoying it like the last couple years. And from a trauma perspective, it would bring up a lot of trauma, even going to Thanksgiving, maybe that we can talk about this too. I've lost my two main connections to my family I grew up with. So I do not see, my family. And there's also a lot of, grief that comes up around not having these people in my life anymore. Around particularly Thanksgiving, because that was a big holiday for my family. And, we'd celebrate my birthday, and I love Thanksgiving food. I mean, I love all of it. My family were great cooks growing up, and I enjoyed Thanksgiving, by far my favorite holiday. And so to, not to have these people, definitely brings up some emotions here. But, going back to the restriction piece, I don't think it's a time to necessarily restrict. I think it's, valuable to evaluate and understand yourself and where you're coming from and how you're coming into this time of the year and enjoy it. There's so much emotional value. When we talk about eating, like food has so much nutritional value, so good, so good for the body and the nutrients and fueling our body and helping our bodies be healthy and all of these things. And there is an emotional component to this. And if you go into a meal and you go in and you're like, oh my God, there's all this good food, I want to have it all, and my body's going to respond terribly, you get stressed out about it, and then you get really anxious about it, guess what's going to happen? Your body's going to react and not usually the preferred way that you would like it to. And if you go in and be like, well, I react to some of these foods sometimes, and I cannot wait to enjoy home cooked food that I never get to have, and company I don't get to have all the time, and, beautiful lights and smells and all of these things. Enjoy it. Just really, really enjoy and make the most out of it, because that does make a massive, massive difference on your body, on how your body responds. You would be terribly surprised if you go in and you're just ready to fully embrace and enjoy a meal. Even if it's things you typically react to, you may not react to, and you might be surprised. Just if you can embrace the joy of it, that goes such a long way.
Yeah. And, it's funny because I've been getting a lot of those same questions too. Like, is now a good time to start after the holidays? And it does not matter when you start this process. Yes, there's going to be different things that we're working on adding in, more self-care stuff, probably some supplements, given whatever you're dealing with. But for the most part, when it comes to food, we're not making that many drastic changes. Like we're really just focusing on making sure you're getting enough food in your body, you're fueling your body with enough protein. I would say that that's the biggest thing that we change, is increasing people's protein intake for each meal. And I'm not kidding you, we see massive shifts in energy, sleep, mood within like the first 2 weeks sometimes, just from making this one small change. It's just, so that's the biggest change that we really make with food. Do we talk about, things that are maybe not so great for us as far as like quality of ingredients? Yes, we talk about that. Typically that's like later in the program when we've gotten things resolved within your body. But so when it comes to actually starting and wanting to address your health, I think the biggest change that you would see that is going to be different during the holiday season is, again, you're just going to be making more time for yourself. That's probably the biggest thing or shift that you'll have to adjust to, is recognizing that you need to hold a little bit more space for yourself throughout the day, on your trips, whatever you're doing. That's going to be the biggest shift.
Yeah, and the protein thing, it's simple. It is, it can seem like a lot at first, and it's not about being perfect. But going into this holiday season, if you can just prioritize protein every time you eat, gosh, will that make such a big difference. And, for me, sometimes when I travel, this looks like bringing snacks. I love some jerky, and I know not everyone feels that way, but what a simple, easy snack to be able to bring. And if, for, especially like Thanksgiving, like most of the sides are carbs. If you come from, a more traditional way of eating Thanksgiving, and yes, there's usually a turkey or some sort of meat there, but if you can just prioritize protein and bring some snacks with you, if you're able to drive or run out to a store, like, yeah, and this isn't our favorite, but it is okay. And it's an easy thing to have on hand, but some deli meat, or some deli meat and a little bit of cheese, like do your own little roll up and have that little protein, little fat right there. Super simple snack. You're getting some protein in, especially if you know that you're not, wherever you're going, any event or anything may not have a lot of protein or protein that you like. that's a great thing to have beforehand, or, just to have on hand just in case. And it's really simple. And the more you can just prioritize that protein and have just a little bit at the start of every single time that you eat, gosh, so that goes such a long way, especially with usually more increases in carbs and sugars during this time of year. This is really going to help with energy, blood sugar regulation, sleep, cognition, mood, hormones, everything. It goes such a long way. And once again, it's not about being perfect. You're not tracking anything. It's just, hey, what are good sources of protein? How can I try and make an emphasis to prioritize this every time I eat? And once again, it's not about being perfect. If you get a meal, it's okay. But the more you can just prioritize this, it really goes such a long way.
Yeah, I mean, for me specifically, and all the people that we've worked with and whatnot, this has been like a really big shift. And I'll say in regards to the holiday season, if you're staying with family members, maybe you don't have control like over as much food, or there's that energetic side too. Like for us, cinnamon rolls Christmas morning was always a really big thing. But I know that I cannot start my day with a cinnamon roll because I will not feel good for the rest of the day. And that's me knowing my body. So make small shifts. I get up, I make myself a couple eggs in the morning, have some sausage, and then I get to eat a cinnamon roll with everyone else after, and nothing changes. It's just making like small changes that are going to be better for yourself, essentially putting yourself first in doing what you need to do, which I know can be easier said than done sometimes, especially if you have a lot of people around you making comments and whatnot. But ultimately, like, just do what you need to do for yourself to keep your body in check. And that way you're going to enjoy probably your day better, the rest of your trip better, whatever it may be.
Yeah. And the other thing nutritionally, drink water. Just really try and stay hydrated. And once again, I know with travel, I know, just do your best. But if you can prioritize protein and water intake, those are game changers by themselves if you do nothing else. And I'm just like looking at my water bottle here, and I'm not doing the best today. Today is my first day back, and I'm readjusting to time change and altitude change and all these things. But it really makes a big difference the more you can prioritize water and hydration, especially, for me, like I flew yesterday and then drove. So the water intake was not great. So, putting an emphasis when you can back on those things, just fundamental things, goes such a long way.
Yes. Yeah. So those two pieces are really big. And then for the supplement piece, which, if you've listened to our podcast, I'm sure you've heard us talk about this a few times. But if you're going to be eating different foods, eating bigger meals, if you've taken an HCl supplement before, that's a really great thing to have on hand, especially for the holidays. I typically increase my magnesium intake when I'm traveling or, staying in a hotel, not sleeping in my bed. That's just something that helps me, keeps my nervous system a little bit more regulated, keeps me a little bit more calm. We've talked about this before. There's a supplement called Cortisol Manager that can be really great. Higher stress situations can help us get better sleep. So there's also those additional things that we can have on hand as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a great list. I would say don't overdo it. I'd say maybe the only other thing you may think about is if you are not typically around a lot of kids and you're traveling and going to be around a lot of kids, maybe children who are sick, just because kids are sick a lot. Rapid Immune Boost is one that I do like to, it's just something I always have on hand. I feel like I'm getting sick, feeling a little under the weather. I'll take that for a couple of days. Just good for the immune system. Just boosting the immune system just a little bit. So that can be really helpful. We talked about this in one of the last few episodes, but we would encourage you not to overdo it on vitamin D around this time of year, which we know some people go a little crazy. Yes. Very few people may need to supplement a little extra depending on where you are, who you are, all that kind of stuff. and you can very much overdo it, which can be very depleting and actually make things worse. So just be mindful of that. But I think, a good digestive enzyme. So digestive enzyme ultra from Pure Encapsulations is a pretty good one. Enzymix Pro is another really good one. I forget who makes that one, but that's really good. HCl with pepsin, Designs for Health, and Pure Encapsulations both have good ones. Those can all be really valuable and very supportive around this time of year, along with, anything extra to help with sleep. I'll throw in emotional wellness if you have a lot of stress and are traveling and have trouble sleeping. That can be really good and really valuable. It is a little pricey, but, if you're someone who really struggles, that can be a good tool as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the one additional thing that I will add to that list is if you are someone who leans towards constipation, something that can help move the bowels along. So we really like, for a non-supplement, Smooth Moves Tea by Traditional Medicinals is a really great option. It's pretty easy. It's just making a cup of tea, steeping it, let it drink it. And yeah, that's a really easy way to keep the bowels moving if you're someone who leans towards constipation when traveling.
Yeah. And once again, liver support, super valuable. If you can take baths or get in a sauna, take a castor oil pack, even just do some rebounding, jumping up and down. All of those things are really, really helpful and valuable. Dry brush, you can easily take a dry brush with you. That can really help too. And then I'll also say, just getting in some movement can be really beneficial. And that can look like a walk, a 5-minute walk goes a really long way, fresh air. You can go at a time where you can get some natural light in your eyes, super helpful. Even just like some stretching, yoga, mobility work. I mean, you can stretch in your bed. Just a little bit, especially like, I think hips, if you're just sitting a lot, something for like your mid-back, thoracic spine, something to help like, twisting motion. That can really go a long way. I know people get just really stiff while traveling, especially if you're flying or driving a lot. That can be really challenging on the body. So, there's a lot of little things. And once again, I think it's really a whole lot easier if you are prepared going into a situation and set some intentions of, hey, I want to do 5 minutes of stretching while I'm away. Don't go crazy. I'm going to work out for an hour every day. That's a lot. That's a really aggressive. Good for you if that's where you land. And 5 minutes, 2 minutes of stretching, of a walk, of even just standing outside, all of that goes such a long way. And it's the little things. The little things really add up. And maybe you make yourself a little daily checklist of gonna shoot for like 80 ounces of water. I'm going to shoot for, starting with protein for at least 2 out of my 3 meals. I'm going to try and get outside for 5 minutes. All of those little things really add up. And once again, it's not about being perfect. There's no guilt. There's no shame. There's no being hard on yourself if something doesn't happen one day. And it's a nice reminder of, okay, hey, today was not perfect. I did not get my movement in. I'm exhausted. I just want to go to bed. And tomorrow I'm going to wake up and I'm going to do my 2 minutes of 5 minutes of stretching before I even get out of bed, because I know my body's going to feel better if I do.
Yeah, exactly. This is not about being perfect. I mean, the whole reason we wanted to record this episode is that we know this is such a big deal for most people, and that the holidays can just feel like stressful, and there's not a ton of joy in it. And we hope that by listening to this, you get some tips on essentially how can you enjoy and take the most out of your holiday season by spending time with family and friends and just feeling the best in your body and actually enjoying all of it. That was the whole reason we wanted to record this episode.
Exactly. And also just to recognize for those individuals who may not have a lot of family, may not be connected to their family, may not have a lot of friends, may not be connected to a lot of their friends. Also understand if this is a sad period of time for you, if there's a lot of emotions, a lot of grief that come up for you, that is also okay. I have spent Christmas alone. I have spent Thanksgiving alone. Like, I have done these things, and I know how it feels. I've eaten Chinese by myself alone on Christmas. I was very sad. I was very upset. And that's okay. It's okay to feel that too. And if you don't feel the joy around this time of year, recognize that that's also okay. And it's also another opportunity to reconnect with ourselves. How can we feel all the things that we're feeling? How can we support our bodies through this time? What does our body need right now? Does it need more rest? Does it need to, be cozy up, with an animal, watching movies, which, not, spending some time outside, even if it's by yourself, what's something that you can celebrate? What have you done? What's one thing that you can celebrate for yourself that you've done this time of year? It's about making the most out of this, and all of it is okay with whatever you may feel. It's all okay.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. Thanks for saying that. And just doing something, if you are that person, finding something that brings you a little bit of joy too around this time of year. If you don't have people to spend it with, I think that alone, just doing something that makes you happy, can go a long way.
Yeah, it really, really does. So we hope you enjoyed and got a lot out of this. And if there's only one thing you take away from this episode, be gentle and be kind to yourself. During always, but especially around this time of the year.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for listening. As always, like, subscribe, follow. If it resonates, a 5-star review means the world to us. It really, really does. And we love reading them. And we hope you enjoy this, and be sure to stay tuned into next week when we have another new episode launch.
Yeah. All right. Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.